Hey YouTube, Todd here, back with another video for you. And today's video is going to center around how to build a template from scratch. This is one of my most requested videos, so what we're going to do today is we're going to actually build a template from scratch. So I have not have anything preloaded. We're going to start from scratch and we're going to go about the process of how I build a template for you guys to see. I get this question asked all the time on my template videos, so I thought what I could do is actually build one from scratch. And the reason why I'm building one from scratch is because I recently just got a new computer. I just got a new Mac Pro, the 2013 one. I still have my old one. I was running it as a slave, but the limitations of the 32 gigabytes is just slowing me down. But right now, I currently only have 16 gigabytes in my Mac Pro, so I'm going to show you how you could build a huge template with only 16 gigabytes of RAM in Cubase 9. I also just ordered some memory for my computer to make it up to 64 gigabytes, so I can have a little bit more to build a template. But if you don't have that option, I'm going to show you how you can do it with just 16 or 32 gigabytes, which I know a lot of us have that. The reason why I didn't go the slave route is some of the things that I like to do. I like to build my templates with instrument tracks, and I was building them with MIDI tracks because I was using VE Pro. I'm thinking in the future I'm going to do a hybrid. I might be doing some of the instruments, like my main sample libraries, on the main computer and have some other stuff on the slave drive. The reason, it's just right now I'm limited with 32 gigabytes of RAM on the slave, so I couldn't run my full template. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get started. So what we're going to do here is we're going to open up Cubase 9. Like I said, I hope all this works. I hope we don't have any technical difficulties. We will see. This right here, I have to figure out. My waves is on my slave machine. I need to get it converted over, but that's no need for this video. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with an empty track. Here we go. Now, what I typically like to do is I like to set this stuff up kind of how I want to do it. Right now I have no ideas what I'm going to do, but like the first thing I like to do is set up my instruments, my basic percussion. So it's going to be strings, let's see, woodwinds, percussion, and brass. What I like to do is I like to have my woodwinds on top, then I like to have my brass, and then I like to have my percussion, and then strings last. So here's how I go about doing it. I usually do my folders. Let's do one folder here. We'll do four folders up, and there we go. I like to make these woodwinds, brass, percussion, and then strings. So this is just my basics. I like to get my basics, folder set up, and then what I like to do once I start building this template out, I start thinking about other things that I want to do, like miscellaneous stuff, ethnic, synthesizers and all that stuff. But this is the core. All right, and then I like to color code them. You can always go up here, or you can I have this turned on within the settings. You can just select here, and I just like to go down basic colors. So I like to start here. I like to leave the red color for my piano, my sketch pianos, and then usually I like my strings to be the green color. So there you go, just basic stuff. And the red color I like to usually have is my scratch piano tracks up at the top, just because they're red and they stand out. So we're speaking of that. Let's add that instrument track. Let's see, I think we add 2. And we're going to do contact, add tracks. All right, it's loading. All right, there we go. So we got those 2. Put those up there. So those will be my piano tracks. And I like to do is I like to make these tracks really small. Just so, because after a while when you start building all these tracks out, it can get kind of messy. Alright, and what I like to do is make those red. Make that one red. Alright, so we'll put sketch piano. This is just, the basics to get started. Sketch piano. There was another thing that what I like to do. I can't remember how I named them now. It's been a while. Since I got the new computer, I haven't been able to compose and stuff, and I kind of forgot how I had my tracks, but we'll get all that. I think I have a sketch piano, and then I have, well, I know in my one template video I would have an A section, B section piano, and then sketch piano. So we could do that, but for right now, let's just do this, and because it's going to take us a while to build this stuff out. All right, let's close these folders up, close this one out. All right, now here's how I typically tend to get started. I like to use, recently I've been using a lot of East-West stuff. So let's build the template with East-West as my core instruments. And I also like to use Cinesample stuff. So Cinebrass Core, Cinebass Pro, Cineperk, and Cinewinds. I love that library too. Now that I'm not using the slave and I'm using the disable track feature, which you can find my video on how to do that if you don't know how to do that, now I can use both of those libraries and just disable the track, and it's not going to use any gigabytes. This is the one thing when I went and used the slave machine and have that is what I was missing, because I'm just so used to just having all my tracks disabled and using the tracks that I want, but they're always there in my template if I need them, but they're disabled, so they're not using any gigabytes up. Actually, I probably should show you guys the system that I'm running here. We'll do the about macro here real quick. So as you can see, I only have 16 gigabytes right now. It's a 3.56. It's a 6-core Mac Pro. So there you go. I'm not having 64 gigabytes or anything like that currently. That will be coming in the future. But I just want to show you how you can build a template 16 gigabytes. And when you think about it, when you're composing, you know, you're not using all your tracks. They're just great to be there. And a template is built so you have access. So let's say you're working on something and that flute just isn't working, and you're like, you know, instead of searching around for a different flute, you know, you have your different libraries there, so you can try out different things, enable the track or disable it, and then if you find the one that works with the track that you're building, you keep that in there. So that's why I just love this workflow. It just works for me. I tried doing the slave thing, and there's just something about instrument tracks that you're just losing out with functionality when you're using MIDI tracks. Okay, so let's get started here. Now, like I said, what I do is I add one instrument track, and so we'll add a contact track here, stereo out, and then we'll just add a track. We could go a little bit further here, and you could do how many tracks that you know that you're going to do, but just to show you guys how I build this out, I'm going to just do it one at a time, because I know I got a lot of questions like, how do you do this, how do you do that? So I'm just going to show you, and so you can get it. So let's start with woodwinds. Actually, let's just use contact instruments right now, so it's a little bit simpler. So let's do Cinewinds Core. Now, this is a tough road that we can get here. So there's two frames of mind that you can go about building these tracks. Are you a person that likes to have all articulations present? Are you a person that likes key switches? If you go back and watch some of my videos, my expression maps setup, since I've start using expression maps, I kind of steered away from having all the articulations, but sometimes I like having those articulations just in case I just need that patch to do a staccato run on like a flute or a trumpet line, and I just need the staccato. So, but I am from the mindset of having just as few many tracks as possible in my template, because it can get hairy. But since I'm using Metagrid and stuff like that, I have key commands set up to where I always show the tracks that have the data. So I think what I'm going to do to build this template is I'm going to stuff this full of every articulation, because I noticed having just one track with all key switches, you kind of forget what articulations you have at your disposal. So let's go out that route. So we'll go to the split patches. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of tracks here, and this can get very cumbersome after a while, because remember, we're doing instrument tracks. So you have to build a track, you know, you're doing a contact instance per track. So this can take a while. So let's do piccolo 8s. And now one thing that I've learned now by doing this is I used to put the settings to close mic. I don't do that anymore. I've noticed I just put everything on full mix, because that's the mix that Cinesamples wants you to use. That's the mixer and everything, the recording. They have everything in there. So I just leave it as is, and then we'll build the reverbs. You know, we'll put the reverbs in there later. All right, so there we go. We got our first track there. Let's name this. Now, naming conventions is what there's nothing that you can do here. I don't follow any rules. I kind of like just to put the sample library and then what it is. I kind of like to copy everything that's here just so I can keep it organized in my mind when I have 500 tracks. It gets kind of cumbersome trying to search what it is, especially if you want to know what library it's from and if you're using multiple libraries. So what I like to do is just put Cinewinds and then just put a little dash, and then we'll just do piccolo, and then we'll just do eighths, like that. Let's make sure that this is in the correct folder, and then we will make the correct color. So we're done with that. Let's make sure it works. There we go. Now, here's another little tip. If you're going to set up anything like, not expression maps, but if you're going to set up your MIDI CC data, this is the time to do it. And why I say that is because think about this. I just told you earlier, we're going to set up about 500 tracks. Well, all you have to do is just keep copying these tracks, and that MIDI data that you're going to set up with your key controls will already be programmed in there. Now, I'm not going to do that right now, but I'll do it for this track. But the reason why I'm saying this is because I recently just got a Panorama P1, and I'm having some issues with my keyboard and that for some reason not working right. So I'm still trying to work that out. What I'll try to do is, let me see. We got to go to, okay, we want to keep this one open, and we want to keep note expression. So how I did that to open up more than one box at a time, just hold down Command if you're on a Mac, and that will open up multiple of these windows, because normally you just have in the inspector window. And I believe that is, what is that on a PC? I think that's, is that Alt? Yeah, no, that is probably Control. I can't remember. I've been on a Mac for so long now. But it's Command if you're on a Mac. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up my modulation. And how you do that is you want to go MIDI assignment. You want to click this one and then learn it. Let me see if this is working. Okay, it actually is working. Hold on. There we go. There we go. Great. So now I'm going to set. What I like to do is I like to check this box here, because then now this parameter will not be able to get changed. So it kind of locks it. All right, now we're going to do CC7. Okay, we're going to do CC11. Now, of course, this is going to be different for everybody, whichever libraries that you're using and whatever, MIDI switch or note expression or CCs that those libraries use. I know Spitfire is different from some, and then, Cinesamples uses mostly CC1, 7, 11, 2, and 9. So let's get 2. And then we're going to do CC9. There we go. All right, so we got those in there. Now, if there's a CC here that you do not see that you like to use, all you have to do is go in here and load MIDI or MIDI control setup, and that should, then you can add whatever CC you want in there. But these are just the default. And I know East-West uses different. I think they only use 7, 11, and 1 for their controllers. So there we go. So we got that. Oh, I did that on the sketch piano. Oops, so we got to do this over. Hold on. I thought I had it the right way. CC1, CC7, CC11, CC2, and CC9. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I did it on the wrong track. Now, not all your tracks that you're going to be doing with articulations is going to have that. But like I said, what I like to do is I like to set that now so it's saved in there. And I don't have to do it again, because I'm just going to take this track and I'm going to duplicate it. So those settings are set in there. Of course, we're going to have to change the, this stuff. But another thing that's great is because you got the library already in there. Okay, now let's open up this. We just have to take that out of there. Go here to Cinewinds Core and go to our next track. All right, move this over. some reason my mouse, there we go, it's not working very well. Okay, piccolo, quarters. Make sure it works. There we go. Duplicate this track. All right, piccolo halves. Great. So let's duplicate that track. So as you can see, this can get very time consuming. All right. So as you saw there, I have a key command already set up to enable and disable my tracks. I set it for D. Let me go up to here real quick and show you real quick if you haven't seen it. So yeah, right there. That's where you find it. It's an audio disable enable track. This feature is huge. This is the reason that you can go ahead and build a completely huge template with a small number of gigabytes of RAM. But the only thing that you're going to find is if you're going to use every one of your tracks in your template, you know, you're going to eat up your gigabytes of memory pretty quickly. But like I said, I notice most of the time when I'm building tracks, I probably don't go over 50 tracks usually. And you know, and some of these tracks that we have, you know, their footprint is very light. I mean, they're not using a lot of gigabytes. I mean, look at 28, 0.14 megabytes. So that's another positive of using just articulation patches, because it's not loading up every single articulation. Now you can do other things too within Contact. You know, you can go in there and purge it and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that you can do. But I find doing this route and then disabling the tracks works the best for me. The workflow. So this workflow might not work for you, but I've tried using a slave, like I said, and I don't know. I got so used to working like this, enable, disable tracks, having everything there at all times, that it just works for me. And I actually missed it after a while. And the reason I couldn't do this sooner is because, my gigabytes, I'm used to 32 gigabytes on my old Mac Pro, and I got a new one. I had to basically copy all my sample libraries. I had to get some external hard drives. So I'm not sure how well it's going to work, because I'm streaming sample libraries on 2 external drives, which they're not SSDs, but in my main Mac Pro that I was using before, my 2010 quad core, I had built-in SSD drives in there. So everything was pretty quick and pretty smooth. It was just I was hitting the limits with the processor. It's an old processor. It's from 2010. So that's the reason why I went out and bought that. But like I said, I think I'm going to go the hybrid amount of way and put some sample libraries on the slave and run most of my main core libraries on the main machine. So, all right. And what you can do so you don't blow up your template while you're building is just go ahead and disable these tracks. And then, you won't have to worry about it when you're building it out. And so let's go here, duplicate this track. And then take this out of here. So, I mean, as you see, guys, this can be very boring and very, it does get very boring. One thing I can recommend to you while you are building this out, save often. So we'll do that after I do this track. Because I've been, many times I've built these things and my template will just crash. And I'm like, oh no, I have to go back and rebuild these. So it's always, good to save this all the time. It's kind of like a video game. When you're playing a video game, you always save often, because in case you die, you're going to lose all that progress. Same principles here. So I'm going to show you how to save the template, or how I do it. Save as a template. And what we're going to do is we're going to name this, as you see, I already have one here in there, but that's the one for my, for the slave. So we're going to put full template, full orchestra template here. And I'm probably going to rename that one up there to slave orchestral template. Actually, let's name this main. There we go. So there we go. That's how you save it. All right. Let's duplicate this. Now, as you see when I'm duplicating, right here, the MIDI CC is already there for me, so I don't have to set that up. And the thing is about that too is if you have a 500 track template and you forget to do this at the start, you got to go in there and set those up for every track, which has happened to me before. So that's why I'm saying it's a little tip to do that on your first track and just duplicate them. It makes it so much simpler. It's a lot easier to manage. I haven't used Cubase in a while, and since I was down with getting a new computer, so I forgot. I have a key command to open this window up, and it's escaping me. So pardon me for a second while I'm trying to figure out what it is. Piccolo. All right, so now we're in flutes. And what I like to do, and this is another thing, a lot of people like to, subcategorize and get all this stuff, very thorough. So it's totally up to you how you want to organize your template. It's a personal thing. Don't think, well, because, so-and-so does it this way, I have to do it exactly like him. No, do it the way that your mind will make sense. Because, like I said, when you get your template built, full template out, and you have 500 to 1,000 tracks, this can get lost. You can get lost very, very quickly. So, I like to, keep my stuff pretty much organized. That's why I label the library and the instrument and what the articulation is, so I know. But I just like to keep it in the woodwinds folder. I used to do it where I would break them up into sample libraries. So I'd have woodwinds, Spitfire, all them, Cine samples, stuff like that. You can do that. I find that it is very helpful. But one thing that I've noticed about when I had everything in there is I would just have like a list of sample libraries and I would just get lost. But this was before I found that key command to show data on tracks that you use. Once I found that, I guess I could go back to that approach. But since I've used it so much this way, it's just the way my brain works now and I see it. So that's why I do this. I go about doing it this way. All right. I gotta find out which key command that was. I think it's I. No. All right. I've been doing this for so long, I forgot how to do it. All right. Okay, quarters. The reason I'm doing this video, and it is like watching paint dry, but a lot of people were confused how I had everything set up in my template. They're like, how do you turn these tracks out? How do you do that? So I was trying to make a lot of quick tip videos to show that, but now I just want to show exactly how I go about setting everything up, and how I get away with having so many tracks and not using any gigabytes. Because let's see, oops, wrong one. Let me pull up my activity monitor. And as you can see, I already have 13 tracks. I have 2 sketch pianos loaded up. And my memory, I'm only using 7 gigs right now. Cubase is only using 1 gigabyte. So let's check that monitor later. When we start building out this template, you're going to see real quick that let me put these pianos in here. So, little background on the sketch piano thing. I just use a piano that I think sounds good, that's going to get me inspired. A lot of times I gravitate towards this piano here. And I don't do anything fancy with it. So it's just for me to, when I get started on a piece, just something to get very inspired and, something to get going. So, because eventually these aren't going to be in the final mix. Sometimes they might be if it's a really good part, but I might transfer them from the sketch piano into a better piano that suits the song. But if this piano works in the composition, I'll keep it in there. But most of the times I don't. I'll just mute it out. What I find that these sketch piano parts of the template really helps me out kind of keeping me focused on the piece, especially if you work the piece out on piano, like the structure of it, like the A section, B section, C, etc., etc. It really keeps me focused on building the track and not get, lost and start going down different paths. Like, no, this is it. So it's my guide track. Okay, before we go too far, I want to show you another thing, what I like to do. I split up my track view. A lot of people had questions about this. So I split this up here like that into two sections. And what I like to keep up here is my tempo, stuff like that. So let's build that right now before we forget. So I like to do a chord track. We'll put that up there. Whoop. Put that up there. I like to have my signature track. I like to have a ruler track. And I like to have a tempo track. Also, if you're scoring scoring a lot, you could put a video track here. Also, another thing that I've found that I like to do, I'm probably not going to do it today. I like to add reference tracks. So I'll create a folder. I'll do it right now. Put reference tracks. So I find tracks that I like. Or something that I'm going to compose, similar in that style. So I'll throw them all in this folder here. And why I do that is so I can, when I'm working on my piece, I can go back and reference the track and try to get it to sound like that. So like, let's say, like Back to the Future score, if I want that sound, or John Williams, or if I'm going to do an epic track, or stuff like that, I'll put those types of tracks in the project for me. Or I might just have a list of reference tracks that I love that I always, from each one of those genres I'll put in there. So that's something new that I actually started doing, and it's helped out a lot. And I'll just throw them in that folder up there. And what you want to do is make sure you mute those, because if you don't, they'll play, exactly when your piece is right here. So, okay. So I like to put this one up here, and I like to change this to seconds, because you already have bars up here, and I like to have my seconds right there. So I changed that one to seconds. I got the chord track. I usually like to bring this down a little bit. And what I like to do is I like to attach this chord track to the sketch piano track. So like that. And there you go. So it will reference that track. And then just make sure you mute it, because you don't want the chord track playing. What a chord track is, basically, when you sit here, go like this, and you pick your chords, right, like that, and you hit play. If you don't have it muted, it's going to play the sketch piano, and it'll play that chord for you. Here, I'll show you. It should. Hold on. There you go. So it plays that chord, and if you don't have that muted, you'll have your composition playing, and then all of a sudden you start hearing these chords from the piano. Like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So that's just a little tip for you. All right, let's bring this down. You got your tempo track, and then your signature track. So those are the ones that I like, and like I said, you can also add a video track if you're going to be doing a lot of scoring. The reason, my philosophy on a template is I don't want to have to think about all this stuff when I'm composing. I just want to think about the composition. So I put every tool, everything that I know that I'm going to need within the template. And that's what I'm saying. This is the beauty of Cubase, since they added the disabled track function, that you can build out this huge template and not worry about blowing up your computer memory. I would say if you have 16 gigabytes, try to upgrade to 32 if you can. I know a lot of people's budgets, don't allow that, but I would say 32 gigabytes. You're pretty much won't ever have to worry with this method. You should be fine. You should never blow out 32 gigabytes, even if you're using it for a composition. Maybe if you're using a full, maybe 3 or 4 different libraries for strings and brass and all that stuff, and you're layering completely, I would say you probably would blow out 32 gigabytes pretty quickly. But if you're just using, basic libraries and basic stuff, and doing reverbs on your, on all of your, like your woodwinds and stuff like that, your instrument tracks, you should be fine. Because like I said, I was using it on a 2010 Mac Pro with 32 gigabytes of RAM, and I hardly ever had an issue with RAM, with me eating up my RAM. using this method. Okay, so let's get back into building here. So let's duplicate that track. I need to find out how to get this window up. Edit instrument. So we go up to here. Edit instrument. Project. And a good way to find a key command, all you have to do is click on this box and start clicking on these, and it will tell you what it's actually assigned to. It's a little tip there. Edit solo. I thought it was tempo track. There it is. It's Y. Okay. Yep. There we go. So I have that key command to open up this window if you want to know how to do that. So you don't have to always click here because that wastes a lot of time. I have it set to Y. It's all about saving, time. So we're gonna do halves. And what you can do is just go like this to make it faster. So like I said, here, like using simple articulations, like this is only 17 megabytes. So that's how you can get away, with a small footprint. If you use this approach, the problem is you might have to use, a lot of tracks. But if you know exactly how the parts are going to be, you'll just have just that articulation for that. So let's say, you have a chord section of trombones and flutes or whatever, and French horns, comping chords staccato wise. Well, you just use the staccato patches for all those instruments, and you're not even going to use hardly any memory up. All right. Let's disable that track. Duplicate this track. So we got flute halves. So this is where it gets a lot really tedious. Is naming all these tracks. It just gets, and like I said, save often. Overwrite. Now, I guess since we haven't talked about it yet, is mixing. I mean, I was thinking about saving that to the end because, that's a whole nother thing of how I like to set stuff up. Let's see. So we'll save that to the end part. Let's just try to get a basic template set up. But as you can see, this is how you set up all of your instrument tracks for your woodwinds, brass, percussion, and strings. And what patches you're going to use, that depends on what you need. I don't think anybody can tell you what patches to use. I think a good baseline would be, use what articulations you tend to gravitate the most. So whatever instruments that you're always go to, whatever articulations you always typically tend to write, keep those in your template. So maybe even before you build your template, maybe sit down with a notepad or open it up on your computer, text edit or a notepad or whatever, and maybe start, looking at some of your older compositions and seeing what articulations, what patches is your go-to for every cue that you've ever written, and start putting those down on a list so those are the ones I need to have in my template. Like I said, at the end of the day, everyone's template's different. Everybody has a different approach, and there's no right or wrong way of building a template. I just think there's different mindsets of what you're going to use it for. There's people that tend to like key switches, and they only want to have two flutes, flute 1, flute 2, maybe flute 3 and flute 4 articulation patches, and they're all key switches because they don't like to see 1,600 tracks, which I don't either, but I like, for some reason, when I don't have the tracks there, I think I'm missing something. So that's where I get in. But if you use that show and disable active tracks function, just look for my quick tip video on that, how to set that up within your key commands. And if you have an iPad, definitely download Metagrid. It's definitely changed my workflow, and you can set up a key command. There's a video on that as well. All right, let's go and duplicate this track out. And let's open that up. And let's get, so now we're on to oboes. And, there's another way to look at it too, is if you want to set it up as score, like actual orchestral score, that's how you set up your template. You can do it that way. Whatever, it's just whatever your mind, keeps it straight in your mind. Some people like to have strings at the top, brass, then woodwinds, percussion, or they like to have whatever they use a lot on top, and then, whatever, when it goes down the list. These are the ones I typically don't like to use. I try to stick to score order, but like I said, the beautiful thing about this template, especially if you have them in folders, is you can rearrange these at any time. So you say, hey, maybe this one works a little bit better for me than this workflow. So that's the beauty about it. A template is always ever evolving. It's always constantly changing because you find a new way to do something, or a better way or quicker way. So do not get locked in like, this is the way I have to have it at all times. No. Your template is going to morph and change and get better over time. The thing that you need to do is just get started and build one, and you'll see the evolution of your my template's changed a lot just in the last year. I mean, the biggest thing that there's two big things that I added that really changed a lot was these reference tracks and the sketch piano stuff. I never used to have that, and I'm so glad I've added that. I'm probably going to change the sketch piano, but I just put those in there for now, because normally I typically do an A section, a B section piano, and then an ideas track. So I have 4 different piano tracks. So I have a sketch piano. So a sketch piano essentially is just me sitting down with no click and just pounding out the chords, the feel of the song, maybe the melody, everything, how it's going to be structured, the A to the B to the C.
It's 3 o'clock.
Very rough. And then I'll have the A section, that I might do, and then I'll do a B section. I mean, sometimes I don't use all those tracks. They're just there just in case. Because sometimes, you'll be working on a section and you just need like a little piano track to kind of work something out, so I'll put it on there. And then I have an ideas track. And what that track is, when I'm working on the piece, I have the structure, and like I want to work out little ideas, maybe like background stuff or a new part or something. I'll put it on the ideas track and then just work it out, play the cue, and start messing around on the piano. So that's the idea that I come from with that. So all right, let's get here. Got to stop wasting time talking, because building this template is going to take a long time, and that's the thing. A template is going to take quite a while to build, especially from this approach. If you're going to do it an instrument track, an instrument for each track, it can, and that's why I think a lot of people get turned off by this approach, because it's like, oh my god. But I have done the slave thing and have done it this approach. It just works for me. The ability to have 1,600 tracks, everything that I own, every sample library in my template if I want, and have them disabled, and they're not using any. It's not using any memory. Let's say, remember, we're at 7 gigabytes. So let's open. Oh, what's going on here? Why isn't this opening? There we go. Well, we're at 8 now. So Cubase is at 1.3. So it's actually not that much. Of course, I have other stuff open, so maybe I should close that out so we can get an actual reading. So hold on, let me exit this stuff. Get this stuff quit. So we only have, yeah. There we go. Okay. Of course, OBS is taking some processes up and some gigabytes and stuff like that. So your rig might be a little bit different if you're not using that. But as you can see, it's only using 1 gigabyte right now, and we already have 22 instances of contact. And I do have these sketch pianos still, so let's put those down. There we go. So I have 1 track. Let's see. And also, this is another reason. So this is what's going to happen when you want to enable a track. It's going to take a quick second to do that, to load up your tracks. So, be mindful of that. This might be a down draw for you. The beautiful thing about using VE Pro is the track is always enabled. And all you have to do is just click on it like this, and it loads up. But, the process is on a slave machine. So there is some beauty in that. But I've just found when I use VE Pro, sometimes it doesn't connect. Things gets all kind of wonky. And like I said, this approach just works for me because all I do is I open up my template. My tracks are there, ready to go. They're disabled. I go in there, and that's all. I don't have to worry about connecting to machines. It's running over internet, stuff like that. So that's why I like this approach. All right, let's disable those. And if you're going to use this approach, definitely set a key command. I use D because it's so much faster instead of right-clicking and going disabled. See, there's how you can do it too. You can right-click and go disable track. If you weren't aware of that. All right, so we got oboes 8s. I'm actually kind of curious to see how this new machine is going to handle this. Like I said, I've been working on a 2010 Mac Pro with 32 gigs of RAM, and that's the limitations of that computer. And it handled pretty well. But I'm curious to see with the new processor, all the power, what this can do. Right now, like I said, I only have 16 gigabytes of RAM, but I'm just going to show to you that you can create a huge template with 16 gigs. Like I said, but the only thing you might run into is if you start, stacking a bunch of libraries and all that, you might eat it up pretty quickly because you're using all those libraries. But if you're just using basic stuff like 30 to maybe 50 tracks, I think you should be able to get away with it. Like I said, I'm so used to 32 gigs. I've never really done it on 16. So yeah, maybe a little less. But I think 32, if you can do 32 gigabytes, which I know a lot of the older Mac Pros, the cheese graters are limited to 32 unless you have, I think, a 6-core or the 8-core, stuff like that. I think they go up to 64. All right, there we go. But I know there's a lot of people out there that have a quad core, like I did, and they're still using them, and they're doing everything they can to upgrade it. That's what I did. I upgraded it as much as I can. I put SSD drives in there. I did all the stuff I could do to keep the computer going, and rightfully so. I probably still could be using that as my main machine. There was nothing wrong with it. It worked. It's just I'm trying to prep myself for the future, and I know it's like, why are you buying a Mac Pro that's about 4 years old? There was a lot of other things. It's heat issues because those old silver Mac Pros would just heat up this room, and oh my God, in the middle of summer it'd be really warm in here. So that was another reason. The output of heat from the newer Mac Pros is so much better. But eventually, what I'll probably do is if whenever Apple does release that new Mac Pro, I will probably take this current Mac Pro along with my old one and just create slaves out of them and have one machine or build a PC. I don't know yet. But once you go down the slave route, you don't need a powerful computer. Because everything's hosted on a slave machine. So that's the beauty of it. It's just, for me, it's the workflow. I got so attached to this workflow that I just like it. I like having everything on one machine. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is just continue to build this out so you guys can see the process. It's as boring as it is, and there's no secrets, there's no tricks that I'm doing. This is how I built every one of my templates. It takes some time, but I think the real beauty is to show you how I set up my reverbs and stuff like that, how I set up my stems. You can go wild on it. I'm very basic. Like I said, my frame of mind is I like to have very basic approach. I don't want to make it complicated because now that I've done this for over a year, this kind of music, you tend to just What is up with this mouse? Okay. This mouse, I don't know. The battery should be fine, but I'm using a Apple mouse. Sometimes they're not the best. I'm just so attached to the to this thing, the Magic Mouse. It's actually the newer one that you can no batteries. So that was beautiful. That was nice when they did that. All right. And like I always like to disable the tracks just so I know that I'm not gonna, blow up my machine, because like that was the thing. I think I got so used to having hardly any resources that I tried to use, the resources as best I could. And that's what's so good about us creative people and composers is we work best with limitations, So, at least I think so. Like I said, I'm just gonna build just this template. I'm gonna keep building it out, but I don't think I'm gonna, have the video that long, because, like I said, this is like watching paint dry, because I want to add other sample libraries to it, east-west stuff and stuff like that. So maybe we'll break this up into a couple sections or something. But I really want to show you guys how to do, or how I do reverbs. And I don't think I'm the best. I don't have the best approach on that. It's just so you know, because I'm still learning too on how to do that. But like I said, I like to keep it very simple. And I use East-West Quantum Leap Reverb. So I don't use anything fancy, because they have, I think it's San Francisco, so they have most of the instruments as a reverb, and then you can do the sections and stuff like that. So I like to build that out, so it's like kind of realistic of how every instrument would have a reverb. But sometimes I think it could be a little too wet. Like some people might think that that's a lot of reverb, but I tend to like it that way, because it fakes it pretty well. All right, so now we're on to clarinets. So that's another, like I was saying before, the different approaches on, now you can see why people like to have just key switches to do all this stuff. So you'd have, you'd have your piccolo, your flute, your oboe 1, oboe 2, clarinets, and your bassoons. You'd have, 5 or 6 tracks, and that's it. And you're done, because you have all the articulation set up. And what you can do there is set up expression maps, which I'm going to do probably. I just like to put it all in there, because sometimes I like to use just articulation patches, and then sometimes I like to use the the full patch. It just depends. So expression maps are huge, and I think Cinesample's stuff kind of leads itself to use one articulation for each, like all your articulations here. I think easier than some other sample libraries, at least for me, because this was like the first. These were the first libraries I kind of bought and worked with. I think they sound great, and sometimes I don't even layer. I just use Cinesample stuff. I don't lay other libraries, and I've never had anybody tell me like, "Oh, that doesn't sound good." But maybe I could be completely wrong. All right, 8ths, quarters. I think a lot of us get caught up in that too. You got to buy all these sample libraries, and oh my God, it doesn't sound realistic. It never will. It never will. Once you learn that and you understand that, these are imitating a real person. You will never, ever be able to get a sample library to sound like a real person, because you just can't. Because every musician has its own characteristic of how they play that instrument, their phrasing, the way they, everything. So once you learn that and you let that go, Like it's got to. I mean, there's some people that can make really good mock-ups, but your average person are never gonna tell. They hardly ever tell the difference between a real orchestra and that. They might, but most of the times, if you do certain things like your reverbs and all that, and you orchestrate your pieces very well, 9 times out of 10 they're not gonna know because they're so used to hearing fake stuff. They're so used to now, it's so ingrained, like with all movies, TV shows, they're all using sample libraries that most of them, it's just that's what they think is real. But us, we can tell. We can tell it's not real. But once I kind of let that go and I just buy the sample libraries that I need for what I need to do and work with them and try to make them to sound the best that they can and not get hung up in that, I got to get the newest library. Oh my God. My life got so much easier because I'm focusing on composing. And that's what we're supposed to do, not focusing on the tech of it, which is great. And it's always cool. And it's always cool to see new things that are coming out. But you just end up, because I've gotten burned. I bought libraries and I don't even use them. Don't even use them. And, and sample libraries are not cheap at all. Very expensive. So I stopped playing that game. Unless there's something, I try to wait to buy a sample library for maybe a project that I will actually need it. Like I bought some ethnic instruments from East West because I needed them for a project. So that's the only time I'll go out and buy something. Like if I don't have it, I'll try to go out and get something that I need for the project, which makes sense. But I don't have to go out and buy every sample library that comes out. Because like usually the sample libraries, they do one thing really great. Like, oh my God, it sounds amazing. And then there's other things they just don't do. So try to find a library that's very well rounded that you can use for different genres, and you could still make it sound great. Try to get the most out of it. Because think about it, get the bang for your buck because you spend a lot of money on these. And why would you want to use 15 different libraries, and spend all that money, unless you like to spend money, which is perfectly okay. Nothing wrong with that. But I know a lot of my people that watch these videos are just getting started like me, like I was, and I don't want them to fall victim to that chase. Oh my God, I got to get the greatest, newest sounding library. There might be something that they do cool, but you're gonna find out real quickly that it's still not gonna be like a real person. It never will. Never will. You can fake it, but I don't know. So that's why I tend to use Cinesamples, because they just have that sound that I like. A lot of it comes down to the sound of the library. I know a lot of people, that's why they buy them, because they just like the sound. They're not even trying to get a realistic sound out of it. They just like that sound. Like brass, I know a lot of brass libraries are like that. People will buy them because they like the sound of that brass, which is perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just come from the mindset, is, because I'm a guitar player originally. It's like if I had one guitar and a couple pedals, well, I'm gonna try to be creative and make what I have sound great. Because there was a time that I never had, I could only afford one guitar, maybe a pedal, every year or 6 months, and you just try to use what you got. But I think like Cinesample stuff sounds very Hollywood, John Williams, kind of traditional. Maybe you could probably fake Back to the Future pretty well on this too. It's just it's all in the programming. A lot of this stuff is. But try to buy libraries that complement each other. Like you can use like Cinesamples with East West, and you can use them together, which is kind of the mindset I come from. And I'm using East West Hollywood Orchestra Diamond. I love it. I think it sounds great. I know a lot of people use it for epic music. Like, oh, it just sounds. I think it sounds really great, especially with the expression maps for East West stuff. Oh man, you could get some really good sounds, and it just helps me a little bit better, getting better sounding compositions. But I do love East-West as well, or East-West Cinesamples. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is. But I think for me, East-West is a little bit easier to program. But like I said, I like having every articulation is one track from Cinesamples. It just works better for me. All right, I think we're almost done getting our basics set up for yeah. Now, as I can see, we're getting close to ensembles. One thing a new approach that I did is I made a folder for ensemble patches, and I would use all of Cinesamples because every Cinesample library comes with a ensemble. So like there's Cineperk, Cinewinds, Cinestrings, all have ensemble patches, and I would just put that in there. But I noticed I just wasn't using those patches. So, but I think it's still good to have ensembles because then you can work out parts. So you can hear what it's kind of going to sound like, and you like strings is a good one, and I think for brass too, like you can work out those chords with the ensemble patches to kind of get the feel of what it's going to sound like. Or if you're speed writing and you don't have a lot of time, I think it's good to include the ensemble patches. But one thing you want to do is don't get stuck writing with ensemble patches. Don't use. I mean, there's something that you can do. You can layer to make another thing to make your composition sounds really good is don't use ensemble patches. Just use ensemble patch. What you want to do is you want to use a piccolo line and play the piccolo line in. So but what you could do is layer the ensemble patch with those separate patches to give it the feel of it. You know what I mean? So that's one thing I used to do all the time. I just use a string ensemble patch and then play the chords like that and do the You don't want to do that. That doesn't sound good. So maybe put those in and maybe turn the volume down the ensemble patches just to layer it in there and give it some more thickness. But you would definitely want to play it in. So play the flute line in, play your cello line in, etc. You'll find that your pieces will sound a lot better. All right, let's see, bassoon. All right, this is the last one for that. All right. See, as you can tell that these those patches have reverb in them. Very minute, but like I said, this stuff's all fake anyway, so it doesn't matter what you do. I kind of got caught up in that, like, oh, it's got to sound real, I got to build all this stuff in there. At the end of the day, I think if you just do the basics, make it sound good, get the reverbs in there, get the separation, pan the instruments. Sometimes your sample libraries are pre-panned. If they're not, try to pan them. Get a map, an orchestral map. You can find them online. So where to see the positions of each instrument, and try to pan them that way, and so you can so it sounds like a real orchestra. If you're going for that, if you're doing epic music or that kind of stuff, a lot of synth-based stuff, then it doesn't really matter because you're gonna pan whatever you're gonna do and make it work. It doesn't really matter. But if you're doing for the typical orchestral film score, classic stuff, do that. You'll get some good separation. All right, so let's move on to our brass. What I'm going to do is duplicate this track, throw this in my brass. There we go. And what we're going to have to do is just rename this. Let's pull up the track. Okay, so now we'll take this. Now, actually, no, wait a minute. Okay, so Cinewinds Pro. Let me go split patches here. So Cinewinds Pro adds some additional instruments that don't come with core, like an alto flute, a bass flute, English horn, E-flat clarinet, bass clarinet. Now, You could put all these in here, but like I said, typically go back to all your compositions and see what instruments you tend to write for all the time. Put those in there. But like I said, it's always good to have every instrument that you can possibly have in your template. That's the whole reason to build a template. We're going to wait on this because I just want to get a basic template here for you guys. Okay, so Cinebrass core. Go to instruments. We want split patches. All right, trumpets. Let's now see. Okay, now these are actually loading up pretty good. Like I said, I am running these sample libraries off one external hard drive. It's a 4 terabyte, so it's not an SSD. I'm very curious to see how this is gonna run. Like I said, I'm so used to using my old Mac Pro that had built all the sample libraries were on SSDs, and it actually loaded really fast and it worked really well. But so far these are actually working pretty good. So as you can see, you can hear a little bit of the reverb in there. You can turn it off. But there's always going to be a little room sound in there, unless you have like Vienna or, the libraries that are very dry. But you're always going to capture a little reverb, which is great because that puts a little realism into it, even when you add your reverbs on later. All right, so we got that. Make sure we spelled that right. So as you can see, I just typically just write it exactly like that. So I put CBC for Cinebrass core. I know I just put Cinewinds up there. It's up to you how typical or how detailed you want to be. I know a lot of people actually spell out Cinebrass, on there. I don't do that because it just gets like the length of the track gets really long and sometimes, and then it cuts it off. So I typically tend not to do that. All right, so we're gonna do quarters. I was kind of worried about, oh man, how's this gonna run off that SSD drive? Is it gonna take a while to load? And so far, it's actually been doing pretty good, faster than I thought. Now, as you can see, I don't have to mess with doing all this. It's already programmed in there for me, and that's the beauty of, just duplicating the tracks like that. It saves you so much more time, especially when you're building a template. Sorry, I had to redo the colors. But yeah, I mean, this is how you build a template, and this is how I go about doing it. But I think now that you guys have seen how my approach and what I did, it's not that difficult. I know when I do my template walkthroughs, you don't see how it's all built, You're just seeing the after thing. I love Cinesamples. Their stuff sounds good to me. And I like East West too. And I know a lot of people rag on East West, but they have some good sounding libraries, and they're very well priced. Very well priced. You cannot beat their prices. You can get they run deals. You can get some really good sounding libraries for a decent price. I know a lot of people are turned off with Play. Play in the past, yes, was horrible. But I think they've gotten it to the point now where it works really well on a Mac. And I've been using East West stuff for a long time. When I first started getting into just composing on the computer, I think I bought a couple East West libraries like Pianos and Goliath way back. I actually have the boxes. I actually physically had to go buy a box, and the box was huge. And when they came out with Play, it wasn't that great, and that's why I left them. Because I tried it. It just did not work on my system. But now, with the Composer Cloud, you cannot beat it. You just can't beat it. So don't if you're new and just getting into this, definitely look at East West. I really think for what you get and what they provide, you're not going to find a lot of companies that offer that on with their price, especially when they run deals. I would definitely wait till they run deals to if you're going to buy some stuff from them, because you can get some really good stuff for pretty cheap. All right. All right, so let's I'm gonna do a test here. Now, obviously, when you're gonna do this, I wouldn't do this many tracks at once. I would just do the ones that you would like to do. I just want to see how much gigabytes I'm using here. Remember, I'm on 16 gigs, so there you go. So we're already up to 11. So we got 12, 13, 14. So about 4 gigabytes left. So watch when I close this out. But see, you're not going to run all those tracks, at a time. So you're probably going to, have, a few of these open. And also, they're not going to, hold on. So now we're down to 7. We're back down to 7 where we started. So there you go. That's what I'm telling you. That's why this approach, you can build a huge template, if you have limited resources. But like I said, I think with 16 gigabytes, you're gonna blow it out pretty quickly. Just depending on what libraries you're using and how many tracks. I'd probably take back that 30 to 50, probably like 20 to 30 maybe. Because how many tracks was that right there? We have 43 tracks right now in the template. So let's get these all enabled. I should have did the sketch tracks too. So there you go. So 43 tracks. You could totally write a piece with 43 tracks. Like I said, most of my tracks that I do are around that range. Where am I at? So we're at 12. We're at 12 gigabytes with 43 tracks, which is not bad. We still got 4 gigabytes to go. And obviously OBS is using up some, so I'm probably around 11, maybe 10 and a half, 11 megabytes used right now. So, like I said, it might not be a complete accurate reading on your system since I do have OBS open. Also, another little trick, I probably could just be doing this. Just click this, like that, and then it'll upload the next sample that you want instead of going over and dragging them. If you know that's exactly what you want next. So just click, you just go ahead and click that. I should have done that. Wasn't thinking. I guess I haven't talked about order of tracks. That's up to you, but what I like to do is, like I said, I like to order my tracks, the ones that I use the most to least. So of course, staccatos you're going to use a lot, sustains, legatos, you're going to use a lot, which I don't think I added legatos in here yet. So that's another thing. So that's a personal choice as well, how you're going to order your tracks. Like I said, I would order them to ones you use the most to least. So like I said, mostly we're using legato tracks, you're using sustains, and you're using staccatos, spiccatos maybe, that's string stuff. But for woodwinds, I think you're going to use a lot of eighths, quarters. Probably not going to use trills as much, but you're going to use your sustain and legato patches too. So I'd probably put legato, sustain, eighths, staccato, etc. Just depends on what your library offers. Is how I go about doing it. And as you can see here, this patch right there, it's a pretty big one, 194 megabytes. Not that much. Now, spell today. I know I was saying like I don't use a sample. Well, these are the way the patches are, they're operated. Ensemble patches, what I meant by ensemble patches is when they have like one full patch with like the tuba, the trumpets, French horns, and trombones all together laid out on your, on your keyboard. I would put those in a separate folder. So I would create a folder that says ensemble patches or just ensemble, and I'd throw those in there. I'll show you what I mean here in a little bit. Because, like I said, Cinesamples, right here, see, Cinebrass ensemble, eighths, quarters, half. So they include those patches. It's just all these patches here into one patch. But like I said, some people like, instead of using a piano to work out their parts, they like to hear the instruments and strings and the feel of how that's going to be. So that's how instead of maybe doing the sketch piano thing, maybe you'd want to put your ensemble patches up there for your sketching. So that's just another alternative way. All right, so we got 6 horns, the eighths. So now these are quarters. And a reason why another person might not like this is the load times. As you see, it kind of loads up, and when you disable a track, it's going to load. And when you're in the heat of the moment composing, you don't want to have to sit here and wait for a track to load. But I think if you use this approach and after a while you do it, you're going to get used to it. And like I said, what I like to do in my templates is I like to keep my sketch piano always on. I don't disable that track. So in case I do get an idea, I know that track's always there, and I can just go to that track, and I can work my part out, and then so I know I won't forget it. That's how I combat that. Now, as you can see, our track count's getting pretty long here. We're already up to 48 tracks, so being organized helps a lot. And that's why I said a lot of people, they'll tend to make folders within the folders. I mean, sometimes I do that, but it just to me it just gets I'm clicking to folder, and I just get lost. I like to have all my tracks right there so I can see them and go right to them, and then just enable them when I need to. It's like, okay, I need that one, enable it, and there I go, I'm ready to go. All right. Okay, we got 6 horns. All right. So I'm just gonna do. I just want to see where I'm at here. Okay, now we're into trombones. I'm just gonna do one library per instruments like woodwinds, brass, percussion, and strings, because this is gonna take a long time. But eventually I'll fill in the other libraries and articulations after the fact. But I just want to show you how I set up this template, just the basics, and using instrument tracks, because I know a lot of people had a lot of questions and wanted to see me how I did this. So that's what we're doing. I mean, right there, I mean, that sounds, if you use the built-in stuff, I mean, you almost don't even need a reverb if you like your stuff dry. Because typically film music is not very old, traditional stuff was not very, wasn't very wet. It was very dry. If you go back and listen to some of that stuff like John Williams and stuff, it's pretty dry. So, that's what I mean. Like, if using the built-in stuff of what the sample library wanted you to use usually works. The problem with that is if you want that realistic sound and you want every instrument to sound in the same room, that's when you got to start building rooms and building reverbs and sending them to stuff like that. So it's just what you're looking for. There's no right or wrong way. But I like to have a reverb for every instrument, and kind of wet. But I don't know. I'm kind of I might actually just leave it like this and try to do a composition and see what it sounds like. Just all built-in EQ, reverb, and the full mix. I mean, as you can see, I have everything here as is. There's no compression. I'm just loading the patch up, and whatever Cinesamples has built in is what I currently am using. And like I said, it sounds. You can hear the tail on it. It doesn't sound too bad. I think now is a lot easier for composers to get going, get started with these sample libraries because they built everything in there for you. I think back, 10 years ago or a little bit more, before I, really got into it, you had to build it all in there because they were very dry. Like Vienna, VSL stuff was very dry. I know sample modeling stuff. This stuff right here is very dry, but you can get some amazing. I've heard some people use that stuff. It just sounds amazing. I'm just not that great yet at that stuff. And I don't like to get bogged down by that stuff. A lot of people get crippled by the tech aspect of sample libraries and all that stuff, and it's like I'm not here to worry. I mean, obviously in today's job market within this stuff, you need to know how to do that, but you can always send it off to a mixing engineer that knows what they're doing if you don't feel comfortable. But I think with today's landscape, you do need to know some basic mixing and stuff like that. I just, like I said, I don't like to get bogged down in that. I like to focus on the music because I think I just come from that background that if my track is good, it sounds good, it touches people, it reaches people, people aren't they'll look past the sound of it, because if you go back and listen to some old records, from old bands from the 60s and stuff before technology, when they use analog, and some of those recordings are really crappy compared to today's standards, but yet people still love that music despite that, because the music is talking to them and they're not getting hung up on the sound. I think it's just us as composers getting hung up on that sound stuff. But it just depends on what kind of music you're doing. I could be completely wrong. So just leave a comment below. But, I just don't think people are really, listening to it the way we listen to it. But I could be wrong, All right, I'm getting the sustains here. Let me see how many I got left. Okay, that's the last one for that. Good. All right, so now we're going to go to percussion. Let's duplicate this track. Put that in percussion. Whoop, looks like we misspelled trombone. That's not something we want to have happen. And also, let's save. We haven't saved in a while. As you can see, you get so caught up in building that you forget to save. All right, now we're on to percussion. So we're going to use Cineperk. Love Cineperk. I think it sounds pretty good. They I think it was like last year or so, they combined, it used to be different sections of Cineperk that you could buy, but now it's just all under one library, which is great. But they have the legacy here. So this used to be how you used to buy Cineperk. You could buy Core, Pro, Epic, and aux tracks. But now they just have it. It's all under one, which is great. But typically I use, like I said, there's the ensemble patch that you could do. So for basic percussion, if you're going to do an ensemble folder, I typically just only use orchestral percussion and then stuff and all the melodic stuff. And I think a few things out of here. Yeah. And then The cymbals, I use metals. Big perk, I think I use the monster low hits, stuff like that. And then I don't use any ethnic, I don't think. But like I said, they have pretty much everything that you can possibly imagine in this, that you could possibly need. Um, Same with East West Hollywood Orchestral Percussion. They have a lot of good stuff in there, and they have some stuff that I think sound pretty good too. But I tend to like the Glock from Cineperk, and but I like the Celeste from East West Orchestral. So there you go. All right, so we got the timpani here. See, this is what I was waiting for. Like, when is that? I'm going to hit these patches that are going to take a while to load. And it's this. So far, we've been doing pretty good. But like I said, I didn't know I haven't built this template yet with this system. So now I'm finding out, okay, Cineperk is going to load pretty slow. Yeah. And I'm not used to this because, like I said, on my old system, everything was on SSD, so it would load up really quickly. And also, like I said, I have all my sample libraries on one external drive, which I know a lot of people don't do that. They like to split up their sample libraries on different drives. So if you can, I would do that approach because it lessens the load. Because think about it, it's all trying to read from that one drive. But for right now, just to get me started, I can only, I only have one drive. And that's another thing. If you're looking to upgrade to the 2013 Mac Pro, I'm now getting what people are talking about is very limited for expandability. It really is, because you only have 4 USB ports. So I had to buy a USB 3.0 strip to put more stuff in there. But it's like, like hard drive. It's like, what are you going to do to put all these hard drives in? Like, if you want to get an SSD Thunderbolt drive, it's like $1,000 or $2,000 for like 1 terabyte. Oh, it's horrible. So yeah, I can, going back to my old 2010 Mac Pro, it was so expandable, and I could put these SSD drives in there. So I'm feeling it now. That's why I said I would probably turn this Mac Pro into a slave machine, and then when the new one comes out, because they said it's supposed to be expandable, then do that. But I don't know. It's kind of disappointing. But like I said, I just needed the the processor. The processor on that old machine was just getting annihilated. It just did not. It just couldn't keep up. It's old tech, which happens. So, yeah, these are going to be a while. Well, I think I've covered what I could cover on this to build this out. We haven't even gotten to strings yet, so I really wanted to build a full template here. So, I mean, we can do that. I just don't know how many people are going to sit here and watch this paint dry. And this is what I was afraid of these, when I was going to hit the limitation to that drive. To load these samples up. So I hope I covered everybody's questions. If not, if you're still watching, leave it down below in the comments section. Your questions, your concerns, anything, because I will make a video of those, a quick tips, because it helps me know what everybody's looking for, because I want to help especially newcomers, because I had a lot of questions and there was a lot of stuff out there that was not very helpful. So I'm trying to make this easier for you, to get started and to get your templates up and to get composing learn these little tricks that I've learned to speed up your workflow, because that's what's crucial with with composing, especially this type of music. It's very you got to be quick at it, and learn your speed. Yeah, so it looks like these ones are very slow. We're actually and another thing was when I used to do screen caps, I'm gonna try to do live composing again, streaming. Hopefully YouTube live, live streaming, probably still on Twitch. My old machine just couldn't keep up with OBS and Cubase and all that stuff being ran at the same time. So hopefully now with this new machine, for streaming purposes, will be good. If it doesn't work this way, I still have my slave that I can do basic stuff, and that should totally work out really well. Oops. When it comes to streaming. But so that's why I still have that template in case this approach doesn't work for live streaming. I can convert to that, and still, because I really want to get back into to doing those live streams, because it keeps me honest, and it really motivates me to work on pieces. Oh, that was a quick one. And it keeps me wanting to compose and finish stuff, which I know a lot of us suffer from. So everyone does. Nice. So it seemed like those patches up there, those took a while to load, but these ones aren't too bad. And you're gonna find that with certain libraries. Some patches fire right up, some don't. It just depends on all the scripting. That's involved in that patch. That's why I typically like to use, single articulation patches, because, it's just scripting for that one articulation. It's not 15 different articulations in one patch usually. I just want to see where we're at here. Okay. Oh, for effect stuff, yeah, we haven't really gotten to that with any patches. I typically, what you could do, and I see a lot of people do, is they'll have a folder within their patches here, and they'll just have an FX folder. So you could do that as well. But like I said, I typically like to have all my patches visible. I don't want to be searching through folders, because that takes more time to, look for those patches. I just want everything right there so I can see it. But like I said, it comes with a price, because when you start getting all these, because like I said, this is just one sample library. I still have more libraries to fill in here for woodwinds. So in that case, you might want to split these up into different folders for, East, West, Cinesamples, Spitfire, etc. Which does work, which, in my case, I might do. It just depends on how big your template is and what you're going for. But like, for a while there, I was just only using Cinesamples stuff. And then when I got East West Hollywood Orchestra, I just started using that because I really loved it. But I still miss Cinesamples. So I'm probably going to use just those two and maybe pepper in like a Spitfire, like certain instruments that I use that I'll put in the template. But when it comes to composing and my core stuff, it's usually Cinesamples or East West. I just love their sounds, and they complement each other very well, for the most part. I've found. Like you have a lot of trouble with Spitfire because they have like a lot of room sound in there, and they're different rooms. But that's what I'm saying. Like, try to find the libraries. When you buy a library that you really love, try to buy sample libraries that complement that one main library that you use. Because when you start buying all these different libraries and they've been recorded and stuff, so like if you have Spitfire, you love Spitfire, try to stick with Spitfire stuff. I love Spitfire too, but I don't know. Spitfire for me, it's quite expensive. I would love to get their whole all their orchestral stuff, their their woodwinds and strings and stuff like that. It's really expensive. So the price that I got all my Cinesample stuff for, was way cheaper. Even East West was way cheaper than going out and buying all of Spitfire. So that's why. But I do love Spitfire. But like I said, you want to try to build, like, if you're new to this and you're just buying libraries, don't just go out and buy all these libraries. Try to find one library that you love, like for brass, woodwinds, percussion, and strings, like your go-to, and then try to build libraries that complement that on top of it. You know what I mean? So you can get your sound, because you want to build kind of something that is your sound, if that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. Because like I said, I made the mistake. I think a lot of new people make the mistake of just buying all these libraries, and then they try putting them all together, and it just doesn't work very well. I mean, like today we can kind of get away with it because they do offer closed mic settings, so you can kind of fake it. But the best approach that I think works is definitely sticking to your a core library or company that you really love, and building on top of that. I think that comes from the guitar, for me, because you have one guitar, maybe one amp, but you could buy all these pedals, but you start mix and matching stuff, it sometimes doesn't work. I think that's where that comes from for me, is from the guitar aspect. Or mindset. And like I said, I think I've talked to people that that don't like Cinesamples. I just don't like the sound. And I've met some people that are tinkerers, and they'll go in behind Contact, and they'll mess with it and tweak it, make it sound the way they want to. So there's another option for you. If you're a tweaker, you might be able to make your library that you bought sound completely different if you go behind the scenes and tweak and make it different, put reverbs and add, because within Contact you can add EQs and stuff in the back. You just hit the mic. You just hit this right here, and you can change all the stuff. So if you didn't know that, you can do that if you're a tweaker. Definitely look into that, because I've heard people stuff that they bought and it sounds completely different, and they're like, oh yeah, it's just Cinesamples. It's like, what? So that option is there for you. But like I said, I come from the guitar mindset, where like I got one, I have one guitar, I have an amp, and I probably have some pedals. Well, let's make it work. What can I make this sound like? So that's my approach to this. It's no difference. Like, I have my core, and then I can put some effects and put some stuff on, and make it work for me. And plus, I am not a professional, as the sense I'm not a major Hollywood film composer, and I'm still learning, and I'm just sharing nuggets of knowledge that I've learned along the way, and tips and stuff. So when I become if I ever become a successful composer and all that stuff, my view might change, but I don't think so. And it's always good to just to double check that everything's routing correctly. Just play the instrument just to make sure. Oops. Why isn't this working? There we go. Oops. I want to show you something too. What I like to do, what I'll probably do at the end, is I'll going through these, and what you could do is go purge all samples, because like as you saw, I was playing stuff, and when you play stuff, it will start adding memory. So what you can do when you're done building your complete template is purge all samples and then disable it. And then what that will do is when you load up your template and you load up those tracks, this is not going to load up. So that's another thing you could do. So you could keep all these tracks enabled and just purge all your samples, save your template file. That way, they go up. We need to save. So save your template that way. And when you load it up, it shouldn't load up very much memory at the start. But once you start hitting keys and start playing stuff, the memory within Contact will start building up. So that's another little tip for you, if you didn't know about that. All right. So as you can see, when I duplicate that track, so if you did this at the start, it will all your tracks like that will be like that. It won't load up, I think. Let's see. I'm pretty sure. If not, just go ahead and do that after you've built your template. Go in and purge all your tracks. So that's another way you can save on memory if you're limited, which we are. Like I said, I showed you I have 16 gigabytes, which is not going to be for long because I just ordered 64 gigs of RAM for the Mac because, like I said, I'm so used to 32 gigs. So I know if I have 32 gigs with the templates that I build, and because I'm going to build a similar template that I used to use on my old machine with some variation, I know I can get away with it with 32 gigs. So I should have no problem having 64. I should have more than enough. Because the reason why I wanted more memory, 64, is because like to run OBS and to do live streaming stuff, I won't be pushing the threshold. Like I have, my 32 gigs that I normally have to the template, and I still have 30 some gigs left for other applications while I'm composing OBS, stuff like that, chat, Windows. So that's why I'm going that route. And plus the new Mac Pro.
It's 4 o'clock.
The current Mac Pros can go up to 64 gigs. I think you can go up to 124, but I'm just going to do 64. I think that's going to be plenty. And, like I said, I can eventually turn this into a slave machine, another slave machine. So if I get another computer, I can split the two Mac Pros into two slave machines, which can lighten the load. One, like some sample libraries here, some on this one, and then I have my main computer and both feeding into that, so it can can split up the load for me. That's the beauty of it. That's why people use slave machines, and that was why I wanted to use one. But like I said, I couldn't do my full template because I'm limited to 32 gigs on my old machine. So, and I just love this workflow. I was using the MIDI tracks, and it just doesn't work for me. Like I said, I for so long, I didn't have all the resources. I had an old machine. I had to use what I had, and I just got so used to that workflow that I just can't escape it. That's my workflow now. But like I said, I'm probably gonna have most of the stuff on my main machine, and maybe have some other stuff that's like a little maybe resource heavy on the separate machine. All right. Well, let's finish this track here, and then let's get a couple of string tracks available, just so I can show you guys the reverb setup, what I do, just some basic reverb, because this video is getting kind of long, and like I said, this is just watching paint dry at this point. I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over again, so I hope you guys know how I set my template up. It's very simple now. You should understand. So we're going to go to the next layer of it. Let me just finish this up, and then let me add a couple of string tracks so we can build that reverb in there. Okay, let's duplicate this track, bring it over into strings, change the color to green. Okay, delete that, open that up, get that out of there. Okay, so we're just going to do Cinestrings core. I have Cinestrings solo, core, and runs. Solo is pretty good, but let's just for now go to split patches here. And let's start, we'll do violins 1. Actually didn't load too bad. I thought this was gonna take a little while to load up. And I like to put everything in there. Everything that's in the title. I like to have it in there so I know exactly what it is. Oh, I forgot. Remember when I turned it off on one of those tracks? Yeah. That's what happened. So I'm going to have to go in there and adjust my template. Remember when I was showing you guys how to turn that off? I forgot I turned one off. And that's what I did. See? That's what I'm saying. Like when you're doing this, you're duplicating tracks, make sure you have everything set and you're not changing it, because if you keep duplicating like that, you go 30 tracks in, now you have to go back and change all that. Okay. All right. So now we got our basics. This is just basics. I got my woodwinds, my brass, my percussion, and a string track. Let me duplicate and get a couple more in there. But I just want to show you how I route my reverb channels, and then I think we can end this video, because I'm pretty sure everybody's got a sense of how I build a template and how you can build a template from scratch. Like I said, this isn't the way, it's one way. It's a starting block, like if you're looking a way to get started. But like I said, this is totally modifiable. You can modify this any way you want. All right. Now, cat's video. 1 second here. I just want to see something. Mixer. Okay. So there, we brought up the mixer window, which I have a key command. It's on M. So what I like to do, what we're going to have to do here is, you could set up a group channel or an effects channel. Let's set up let's do a group channel. We're going to do 4 right now. Stereo out. So the group channels come up here, and what we're going to do is we're going to name this one woodwinds, brass, percussion, strings. And what I like to do is I like to color code these exactly with the colors that I have my tracks, just to keep it all organized. It helps me know exactly, because then I'm identifying all my track categories by their color. So it just, it just helps, because when you open up the mixer, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, let's open up the mixer. Now, as you can see, they're all color coded, which helps out. Okay, And what you can do is if you go to visibility here, you can get rid of that if you want. If not, you can keep it down there. Or you could put it up here in the top part if you want. It's all up to you how you want to do it. So what I got to do is we got to enable some tracks here so we can route these. Okay, there we go. All right, let me see here. Routing. So we got the piccolo. Now, as you can see, currently these tracks are going to my stereo out bus right here. And we don't want to do that. So what we want to do now is we want to send this track to woodwinds. And then you're going to go to your woodwinds track, and it's already set up for routing to go to stereo out. So that track is going to this bus right here. And what I like to do is I'll add my reverb on that. Oh, I don't have my reverb set up yet. No, here it is. Wait, sorry. QL spaces. There we go. So I'll have an instance of Quantum Leap. What I'm going to use, though, on that stem is I go to Instrument Specific Tour. I go to Woodwinds. And then I find the hall winds right here. So front and rear. One second. I want to try to see something. So, okay, let me go to strings. Okay. No, I think it's brass. So as you can see, okay, the reason why I use this one is because I forgot Woodwinds doesn't have it. But they have individual instruments here. So they got French horn, trumpet, and tuba. So that's why I use these reverbs. But for woodwinds, it just has front and rear. So what you can do is on the stem is you could do the, let's just do this. We'll do the rear. All right, I gotta highlight the piccolo track. Okay, and what you can do then on the actual track here is you can do an insert QL spaces and put the other one that wasn't there. So this could be overkill. I mean, this really could. So we'll do the front. And that will give that instrument the front. So now let's turn these off. This is without them. So let's turn that one on. That's actually on the piccolo track. So you got that. And then we'll add this one here. Now you hear that tail? So that's how I go about doing that. So this one, actually setting these up like this is kind of something new that I've done. I used to just put the reverbs here on these stem tracks. And I would never do it like this, but I'm trying a new approach and it seems to work very well. But like I said, this can get very, once you start stacking all these instruments up, it could get very, very heavy reverb. So what you could do is you could tailor that down and maybe adjust the settings, within the Spaces plugin. All right, hold on. I want to, let's see. All right, so let's go here. The trumpet. We'll add our spaces. So go to instrument specific. Now you can use any reverbs that you want. I just use QA spaces because it's easier and I think it sounds okay. It sounds decent. Like I said, I don't want to get bogged down by using plugins and what plugin do I need and this and that. So, I typically don't want to do that. So we're going to do the front unless this has it. So that's, what would I say that was a trumpet? So we're going to do trumpet, front. Yeah. Hold on, stereo. Okay. And then what we're going to do on the brass, we're just going to do the room for the rear, because we got a front reflection, and we don't want to put a trumpet on there, so we just want a rear of that hall here. So all the brass, because as you can see, every one of these instruments already has a rear and a front. So we're going to do the front on the instrument level. I hope I'm making sense. As you can see, I did on this trumpet here, we're doing front, and then on the stem, I'm doing the rear, because all these instruments within brass, because they have a separate reverb for that instrument, is the front. So I put that on the rear. So let's see how that sounds. And then let's turn these off. Here we go. All right, turn that one on. And then turn this one on. There you go, you get that tail. So that's it. I mean, that's basically how I set up my templates. And then on my stereo out bus, this could be whatever you want. I typically will do a, I don't have my wave stuff on here, but I typically do a slate, the slate FBC rack, I believe. Yeah, I do this, and I will do a setting. I believe I do the red, and I just do the glue or glue HP. Just depends what I'm looking for. And then I'll put the slate tape machine on there as well, and I just leave that as default, just to give it a little more analog sounding. And then I think with the waves plugin, I use a limiter, and that's usually what I do on my stereo out bus. It's always everly changing, but I definitely have that slate mixer thing in there. It sounds really good. And sometimes I'll put that one on my piano tracks too, and really make those piano tracks to compress them and level them out. They sound really great. Well, I think you guys have a sense of how I build a template. I don't want to sit here and build out every other track, because it's a similar process. I wanted to show you how I did my reverbs. It's very basic. But like I said, a template's always ever evolving. It's always changing, and feel free to change it up and mix things up, because you're going to find new ways to do things. And the only thing about that, a little side note, is when you do that and you go back to an old project, you're like, oh man, because you get so used to your template the way it is at that certain time that you're using it, and you go back to an old way, you're like, oh, I forgot I didn't put that in there. So that's the only thing, that could kind of mess it up. But I know there's a way in Cubase that you can actually just save like parts like this, and you can import sections from old project files into your new ones. So, I mean, there's ways to do that too. There's so many different ways, but this is my basic approach and my workflow that works the best for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a little long, but I think it's going to give the process, and you guys are going to understand it. Like I said, if you have any questions, any concerns, or any videos in the future you'd like to see, put them down in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the like button. If this is the first time you're watching this channel, hit the subscribe button. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.